Marie Walsh. She's from Limerick Institute of Technology. She's a lecturer in the Department of Life and Science, there where she worked for over 20 years. She teaches chemistry and pharmaceutical sciences and is course leader for the degree in drug and medicine and product analysis. She is involved in the Irish Science Teachers Association, a long list of organizations, the Chemistry Education Research Group at the University of Limerick, Chemistry in Action magazine, SciFest, Canada, Ireland, the Royal Society of Chemistry Education Division, and the Irish European Committee.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. I hope that if I speak too quickly, that you tell me to slow down, but I'm also conscious that this may take longer than 10 minutes if I go too slowly. So, as you've just heard, I'm from Ireland, which is on the west of Europe, and we're currently in a state, in terms of education, of a lot of changes. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of the changes, and I'm just going to focus on a few of the points in the presentation so that I can give you an idea of how things are for chemistry teachers and pre-service teachers in Ireland. So this is just to explain to you the Irish education system. Some of the partners already are familiar with our system, but for the Bulgarian guests and representatives, you may not be so familiar. But you know, like all systems, we have primary, secondary and tertiary. Primary is 8 years from age 4 to 12, and within the primary system, science has been a compulsory subject since 2003. However, many of the teachers trained before 2003, so science teaching isn't easy for those primary school teachers. Secondary school is divided into two distinct phases, junior cycle and senior cycle. The junior cycle culminates in a junior certificate examination. The senior cycle culminates in a leaving certificate examination. So at this stage, there's a 3-year program, and within that program, science is an integrated subject. So the students learn chemistry, physics, and biology. However, to teach the junior certificate science, a teacher may not have chemistry to degree level. So you could be a biologist or a physicist, but you're expected also to teach chemistry. So that again is an issue. The transition year is an optional year in between the two phases, and then the leaving certificate program is 2 years in length. Chemistry is a subject on its own at leaving certificate, and it's available at 2 levels, higher and ordinary level. About 14% of all students take chemistry at the leaving certificate level, and teachers who teach at that level should have an honours degree as a minimum in chemistry. The 3rd level is also undergoing a lot of change at the moment, but today maybe it's most important to concentrate on secondary school chemistry. You can see on the right-hand side, we have 2 new chief examiners in the last 6 months, one for junior certificate science and one for leaving certificate chemistry. And we also have a lot of reforms that have been announced recently. Everything is regulated by the Teaching Council. So it's being given more and more legislative power in Ireland. This body is informed by the government, it's informed by international research, and its main role is to make sure that teachers are keeping up to date with progress in ICT, in numeracy, literacy, but mainly, as Marilena mentioned, we have to have a connection between education research and what's actually happening in the classrooms. So the Teaching Council is going to make sure that these things happen. The focus of initial teacher education is that, if you look at the top statistic, in Ireland, teaching is still a valued profession. The students who enter from secondary school into college courses in teaching are in the top 15% of their academic cohort. So it's very much a valued profession. The same number of points will gain you access to courses in advanced sciences, paramedical courses and so on. So we know that the students who are entering teacher training are intelligent. They've been able to perform very well at leaving certificate. In 2012, the government commissioned an international report, the Salberg Report. And the Salberg Report has emphasised over and over again that initial teacher education should be providing teachers with a set of competences, but it's not producing a finished product. So what the Salberg Report has said to all of us, it's informed the government, the teaching organisations and the teaching council, we must connect research by experts with actual in-service teaching. So I'm going to move very quickly past the primary science because really there are supports there for primary science. It's a whole set of issues on its own, but we're more interested in secondary teacher education. Currently there are 7 colleges in Ireland offering concurrent degrees with science teacher education. And of those, 5 of them qualify teachers to teach chemistry. Now remember, we're quite a small country, about 4.5 million people, but we have 700 or so secondary schools, and we have a growing young population. So there is a demographic change, the population of young people is increasing, we need to keep producing teachers to teach these young people. There are 6 colleges which offer consecutive postgraduate diplomas in education, and they require chemistry to honours degree level for entry to the postgraduate training course. So these are the 2 modes of teacher education, concurrent and consecutive. And at the moment there's a big debate about which of those is better. And perhaps you have different experiences of how you became chemistry teachers. So some of you may have trained concurrently, others may have trained consecutively. Just to explain what that means, if I were a student in Limerick, and I want, which is where I'm from, or where I live, and I wanted to become a teacher, and I couldn't afford to move away from home, there are 3 colleges in Limerick. There's the Limerick Institute of Technology, the University of Limerick, and Mary Immaculate College, which is an education-based college. If I want to be a primary school teacher, I can go to Mary Immaculate College and I can do a Bachelor of Education in Primary Education. So I'm qualified to teach in primary school. If I want to become a secondary school teacher of chemistry, I have a lot of alternative routes. I could choose to go to the University of Limerick and to take part in a 4-year concurrent Bachelor of Education programme. And I could graduate as a chemistry teacher in 4 years. The big debate at the moment is whether or not that 4-year programme gives enough chemistry subject content knowledge to the graduates. So in the last 2 years, the Teaching Council has reviewed the programme and it has said that they must increase the amount of chemistry that the undergraduates are studying, as well as the pedagogies. My alternative route is to either go to the Limerick Institute of Technology or the University of Limerick and take a Bachelor of Science degree with chemistry as a major subject. I can then, if I graduate with upper second class honours as a minimum, I can then move into the postgraduate diploma in education. So this is 4 years, this is 4 years, this is 4 years, and then these are an extra 2 years, these postgraduate diplomas. The advantages many will see of the postgraduate diploma is that the people who then go into teaching have a good subject content knowledge in their chemistry. And then the postgraduate diploma develops their pedagogical skills. But it's a 6-year path. So you can understand why many people would opt for the 4-year Bachelor of Education degree. So we have got all these alternative options, but remember that the student The Limerick Institute of Technology route, that route would be for people who are not quite as high in their Leaving Cert, but they still can become chemistry teachers in the end. So what are the teachers trained to teach? For junior certificate, chemistry is 1/3 of a general science course. It includes 10 minimum mandatory experiments and an optional project at the end. Leaving certificate chemistry is offered at 2 levels, higher and lower. The teacher has to be able to cope with the classroom, where some students are high level, good achievers, and others are low level, and they may have ended up in the chemistry class because there was no room for them anywhere else. So that's one of the things that has to be built into the training, being able to teach a varied audience of students and to communicate with all of that audience. The high achievers in chemistry at Leaving certificate level are very demanding students. Chemistry is usually taken by students who need it to become doctors or pharmacists or veterinary doctors, the very high professional courses that have chemistry as a mandatory subject. So you've got a subject that has huge content, very technical, very demanding students, and sometimes very demanding parents. And that's without even looking at the content knowledge. So the training has to be first class. At the moment, all of these curricula at second level are undergoing reform. The point at the bottom is very important. The reforms are to train teachers in a new way for a new type of student who wants different experiences of learning, to still come out with subject content knowledge, but in a way that's very different from the way the teachers themselves were taught. So if you're going into teaching now, just because you like the chemistry teacher in the school, you think you'd like to be a chemistry teacher, you're going to be asked to teach in a very different way from what your teacher would have delivered to you. So newly qualified teachers, we'd say that they make it through this pathway of either the 4-year degree or the 6-year degree. This is part of the regulation now for the Teaching Council. Newly qualified teachers have to achieve professional accreditation, and they have 2 areas that they have to deal with. One is probation and the other is induction. Probation involves a minimum of 300 hours of teaching in relevant subject areas within the first 3 years after graduation. And there have to be a minimum of 14 students per class group. Now, the 300 hours of teaching, why I put ... after the relevant subject areas, is only 200 hours need to be in chemistry. The other 100 could be in learner support or some other area or some other subject. The induction has to happen within a 3-year period as well, and what that means is that the newly qualified teachers, whether they're in temporary jobs or whether they're moving from one contract to another, must attend 10 education centre workshops of 2 hours each within that 3-year period. So they've qualified, by whatever route, they now have to undergo this 3-year session before they're fully accredited as teachers. The 10 education centre sessions was actually reduced in the last month. It was 12, it's been reduced down to 10. Because what's happening in Ireland is we have had 2 phases where people have been offered early retirement. The people at the older end of the salary scale, the higher end, are very often opting for this early retirement with incentives. So we have a lack of very well qualified, very well experienced trainers. So you see there's already been a reduction in the number of training sessions which are being offered. And down in the bottom corner, we have to remember that if you're going into a school in Ireland as a chemistry or science teacher, you also very often are the technician. You have to prepare all of the solutions. You have to get ready for the experiment. You have to make sure that you've got the equipment, the glassware and so on, because there's very little technical support. So we've got these teachers, they've gone through their training programme, they're going through their probation and induction, they'll promise to do anything, they need to be technicians as well to be able to keep their contracts. We've got a new pilot scheme called the Drogheda Pilot, which is a new model of induction and probation. Drogheda is the Irish word for bridge. So this is a bridge between qualification and accreditation by the Teaching Council. And I've highlighted the key points of the Drogheda Pilot. We are reintroducing the idea of mentor teachers. That when a newly qualified teacher arrives in a school, like we arrived in this room this morning, that there is a friendly face in the subject area, hopefully a good, well-experienced chemistry teacher who will help the new teacher, who will direct them, who won't use them as a slave to do all the making up the solutions and cleaning the lab and everything else, but will actually help them with their lesson planning and their curriculum development. The cooperating teachers are teachers who've been identified in schools who will help the training teachers. So the mentor teachers are for the qualified, the cooperating teachers are for the trainees. And just before I finish off now, I'd like to say that we don't go out and we're not left on our own. We've got a very good number of different support networks. We mentioned some of the networks that I'm involved with. We've got the Irish Science Teachers Association is a voluntary association, but it's got something like 1,200 members, all science teachers, and we collaborate and communicate with each other. We meet on a regular basis and we share ideas about curriculum and about training. The government agency, the Professional Development Service for Teachers, has a group of trainers for each subject area. So we've got induction courses for chemistry teachers. Currently, yesterday and today in Limerick, there is a chemistry for non-specialist course to help people who might be teaching the junior certificate in chemistry who don't have it in their degree. We've had create your own website courses. We've got junior science support is ongoing, and that's one of the materials that Marilena referenced in her presentation. We've got an annually updated CD of resources called iChemistry, and we've got the Schoolology is what the teachers were offered for training this spring. It's like a virtual learning environment that you can operate within your laboratory or your classroom for your students only. So it's a communication system for chemistry teachers, for all teachers, but this has been delivered specifically for chemistry teachers. This is just a screen capture of the iChemistry resource, which everyone is available to access. It does ask you for a login, but I'm assured that you no longer need the password key. So everything that's happening in Ireland has been informed by the Solberg report. Solberg is Piers Solberg. He's a Finnish education specialist. The report is not just about science teaching, but about teaching in general. And to go back again to what we've heard already, key characteristics of internationally recognized teacher education systems include high-quality instruction on both pedagogy and pedagogical content knowledge, strong focus on research as a basis of teaching and learning, and a close and systematic engagement with schools. One last support that I want to mention, mainly because it's also based in Limerick, is the National Centre for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching and Learning. And what the guiding principle for this centre is to connect the research with the classroom practice. So it attributes particular value to the development of strong subject matter knowledge as a basis for strong pedagogical knowledge and practice in the sciences and mathematics. It attaches importance to promoting practice that is informed by research. So the centre has a team of postgraduate students in all science and mathematical subjects, and they're carrying out ongoing research which they're then disseminating to the community. And it also hosts workshops to help with in-service training. This is happening this week, from Monday to Friday this week. There's the 7th annual workshop on chemistry demonstrations and chemistry magic shows. It's a way of encouraging teachers to not only sell the chemistry to their current students, but also to encourage other students to maybe take on chemistry. You don't need to worry about the math your laboratories that deliver the gas to the Bunsen burners. So what you do is you wash your hands really well and put lots of soap on them, and you put bubbles of gas from the gas taps onto the soap, and then you set fire to it. And it burns out really quickly, and because you've got the soap, you don't burn your skin. Now it takes a little bit of practice. What these teachers are doing this week are practicing these chemistry experiments. They make a video, and they also then perform a magic show for all of the other in-service trainees. So he was on hard, and he was the volunteer because he came here. So don't try it if you come here. And thank you for your attention.